What the Minister does not put in his statement is actually that many of the parts of the functions of the Chief Archivist have been removed, and their functions, for example, that clause has actually been taken out. That actually weakens the role of the Archivist rather than strengthens it. Coming to the point of the international research that he was referring to, if you actually look a little closer at some of that international research, you'll find that the safeguards for the archivists in those countries that he mentions are actually much more robust than what he's proposing to put forward into this bill. And if he looks at the example of the UK and the US, for example, they are in fact completely separate and provide that those sort of safeguards that he believes is in this, but in fact it's not there at all. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to raise one more procedural matter, which is the fact that before, when the Minister actually tabled the Crown Law opinion, and he said that was actually publicly available. Now, none of us have been able to get hold of that.
It's on the website. It's on DIA's website.
Didn't get it under the OIA.
That's not our understanding, Mr. Minister. And I think that the fact that he brought out the whiteout bottle in order to before he started actually tabling it is probably speaks to the fact that this government has been less than forward in coming forward with information. And if you look at anybody that's tried to get put an OIA submission through, and I include in this journalists. And even Radio New Zealand, who's here today, Radio New Zealand, who have been trying to get OIA releases done and have appealed to the Ombudsman over and over and over, they have been unsuccessful on the most minor of cases. I think that that this bill is being discussed today in light of all that is in fact testament to where I believe this government wants us to go in terms of information and its availability to the public. It's going backwards rather than forwards. It's going to be more guarded, more protected, more compromised than it was before. I want to just mention a couple of issues around the independence of archives, and I want to refer Mr. Chair to the very good submission that was made by the Human Rights Commission. And the Human Rights Commission warned and cautioned at the downgrading, and that was the term they used, the downgrading of record management that calls into questions New Zealand's standing as the most transparent and the least corrupt country in the world. And it refers to the Transparency International ranking, which puts New Zealand as one of the least the least corrupt country in the world, and believes that this, in fact, would actually compromise that position. It also goes on with a very important point. The important point, it says that the bill splits possession and control. It awards possession of the archives to the DIA, Department of Internal Affairs, while the Chief Archivist retains control. Now, this creates, Mr. Chair, a real conflict of interest, I believe. It creates a conflict of interest between the powers that flow from possession, i.e. holding it, and the Chief Archivist acting on the basis of controlling rights. And if you have an archivist that's at the third tier of any bureaucracy, there is absolutely no way that person can stand up and independently argue the case to keep that information independent as it should. I just cannot believe that the Minister can honestly stand up and say this is something that is moving archives forward in New Zealand. It's actually, indeed, it's moving it backwards. And when we come to the rationale of this, why we are here under urgency on Saturday afternoon at 2:25, why we are here debating this. Again, the Minister comes up with no real good reason of why we're here, except for technology and the technological changes. But I've been told, Mr. Chair, that the servers and the computing capacity that is in fact under the control of the Department of Internal Affairs is actually at maximum now. Sure. And now we're going to be bolting onto that the library and the archives in totally different formats, Mr Chair. Mr Chair.
Ko,